Why do you do what you do?
My devotion and mission is to help men become so emotionally connected to themselves, to heal the little boy within them, so they're no longer showing up in their relationships, in their business, or with their family as the little boy. They can be the bedrock of safety and foundation for the people that they love most, and they can create this safe environment for their children to grow up in a loving family. Loneliness is the byproduct and is the disease of the wounded inner child. And that's a very deep void to try and fill. So I spent my entire life seeking to fill that void with things, with women, with relationships, with making money. When a little boy didn't receive the love and connection that he needed, and he felt this sense of loneliness or emptiness in his childhood, what happens is he gets really good at being a visionary. But what's actually happening in that moment is he's painting a picture of the future to avoid the current feeling and emotion that he's feeling. To the point where, because I'm living from that fear and that anxiety, those very fears and anxieties manifested the very thing I was most fearful of. I got home one day from the gym, she'd packed her stuff and she left. My body just shut down. And in that moment, I couldn't tell the difference between the 25-year-old laying on the floor curled up in a ball and the 7-year-old who was curled up on the floor in his bedroom when mum was seeing another partner, and there was just this big emotional disconnect. I realized that little boy was still within me, and that little boy that was so fearful and was living life based on the belief that it's a matter of time before people leave me, actually unconsciously created that because that's what was familiar to me.
When people ask you what you do, how do you answer them?
There's a surface level answer and there's a deeper answer. The surface level is I'm a men's coach. The deeper answer is I help men heal their unresolved childhood trauma that keeps them limited in their business, in their relationship, keeps them stuck at a level of emotional maturity that causes them to sabotage themselves and for the most part, keep them feeling small, especially in business. Like it's a huge, huge piece that shows up. So in a deeper answer, that would be it.
You said the word childhood trauma. What does that mean, like through your lens?
Yeah. There's childhood trauma and then there's missed developmental needs, the needs that we didn't have met throughout each stage of development. So we go through certain stages of development from boy to man, and through those natural stages of development, there's certain needs that a little boy and a girl as well, but for the most part, my work is with men. Now, through those stages of development, there's certain needs that a little boy needs to claim his strength, to develop a strong sense of self, to connect with his emotions, to really cultivate a sense of identity, right? But a lot of men, and I have the proof and evidence because I work with hundreds of men all over the world, they didn't have that safe, loving, masculine presence growing up or a healthy representation of the motherly energy growing up from their mother, right? And they missed out on their rite of passage from stage to stage. And those rites of passage, which means he claimed that strength that he was supposed to gain in that stage of development, we stay stuck at the last developmental stage that we were at. And a lot of men didn't receive the love and support and the nurturing that they needed as boys, or they didn't have this safe, loving, masculine presence to feel and experience their anger. And then they become disconnected from themselves emotionally. And they start building this false sense of self and going through life, fitting into their family system. So I speak a lot about the wounded inner child. And when I say the wounded inner child, I mean there's unresolved parts of us from childhood that show up today as triggers, mostly in relationship, especially in relationship, and mostly when you're in a relationship and you run a business at the same time. Because when a man's operating from the consciousness of a boy, those unresolved wounds or unmet childhood needs, right? It's like we're time-stamped to that energy, to that level of consciousness, that level of maturity. And when we're time-stamped in that period of time, certain triggers today will trigger you back into your last developmental stage, right? Or the unresolved trauma that you had as a boy. Now, if you think today, imagine, if you're listening to this, imagine that you have everything that you have going on today as a business owner, as a father, a partner, a leader, husband, whatever. Imagine you have this much going on today, but there's a little 5-year-old boy dealing with all of this. Imagine how overwhelming that would be for him. And that's why it's overwhelming for a lot of men. And they get easily reactive, or they shut down emotionally, or they come home after a big day of work and they just can't deal with the emotions of their woman, because they're operating from the emotional capacity of the little boy. And that little boy is the one who's actually running the show. And his emotional capacity is very, very small. So if you think like a little shot glass, it'll fill up very quickly with water, right? And when a man heals those younger parts of him and integrates those younger parts of him and goes through the necessary rite of passage and claims the strengths that he was supposed to gain along the way in stages of development, he goes from a shot glass to a bucket, and his capacity is so much greater. He has the capacity of the man who can deal with the decisions that he needs to make in his business. He can hold a safe space for his partner's emotions, even though when he might not have the capacity, he can still hold space for it, right? He knows what he needs to regulate and soothe his nervous system. He's not turning to porn or drugs or drinking to soothe himself, right? He has all of this within himself, these resources within himself. So that's the main part. It's like we develop these resources, these internal resources in ourselves that we then carry throughout our life. And so to come back to your initial question, like that's, for the most part, that childhood trauma, like that's what it looks like. And for the most part, it's this subtle emotional disconnection that you experience over a long period of time that causes this disconnection from self, where it's, I don't truly know who I am at my core. And a lot of men don't really experience that until they go and build a level of success and they think the thing that was going to make them happy doesn't make them happy.
Yeah.
So I work with a lot of men who have climbed to the top of that ladder and realized, holy fuck, this is not it, right? Or their relationship, no matter how much they do, no matter how much they give, it just never feels enough. And he's just constantly pouring from an empty cup. And that's very much how the boy shows up in relationship.
Why do you do what you do? Like what's the motivation behind your deep devotion to this line of work?
As I shared before, there's a younger part in all of us. There's younger parts. There's a younger version of us. If you think of, the way I like to describe it is, if you cut a tree in half and you look at the surface of the tree, you'll see that there's rings of a tree. And those rings determine how old the tree is, because each of those rings are a stage of development of the tree. So the first original ring is still there. So is the second one and the third one and the fourth one. All of those rings are part of the tree. Just as us as humans, that little boy is still a part of you. Those rings, the inner teenager, the inner school-aged boy is still part of you, right? Now, that boy, that inner child, those younger parts of us, those rings, were once within a family system and still are. Now, as humans, it's more important for us to fit in and survive in our system than be ourselves. And if you think of a system, every single part of the system affects the entire system. If you think of the ecosystem, if there's one piece within the ecosystem that's out of place or disconnected, it affects the entire ecosystem. So when there's emotional disconnection, let's say between mum or dad, it affects the entire system. And what happens is we're very adaptive as humans. So as children, as a little boy, I started playing a certain role in that system. Because what we do is we take on certain roles and responsibilities to bring balance and harmony back into the family system. So this is where we take on certain roles. So when I was a little boy, we migrated from South Africa to Australia, and it was the whole immigrant mentality. Dad just did whatever he did to make it work, to make money, to put food on the table, to give us the life he never actually had in South Africa. And in that, mum and dad started to grow apart. There was this emotional disconnection within this system. So as a little boy, I took on the role of responsibility, that my parents' emotions are my responsibility. And I have to do whatever and be whoever, become whoever I need to be in order to be whoever they need me to be in the system, right? So I became the biggest people pleaser, the nice guy for my dad, to become whoever I needed to be to get his love and validation from him. So in that moment, because of the disconnection in this family system, I'm now taken out of my childhood, where I don't have this bedrock of safety and love and foundation where I can gain the strengths that I'm supposed to gain of just being a fucking child, where I'm taken out of my childhood and I've taken on these roles and responsibility of my parents' emotions. And then building an entire life of being a nice guy, where I had to be and become, or I believed that I have to be someone other than myself in order to be loved. And because I was taken out of my childhood, there was unmet needs of love and deep emotional connection with my family system. That is a deep void of emptiness. That is a deep void of loneliness. That's where loneliness comes from. Loneliness is the byproduct and is the disease of the wounded inner child. And that's a very deep void to try and fill. So I spent my entire life, young adult life, seeking to fill that void with things, with women, with relationships, with making money, with doing all of these things. Until it got to the breaking point where I, for a period of time, just wanted to kill myself, wanted to end everything because it was just so painful. There was a period of time where, as a 20-year-old, I felt and experienced the 7-year-old that was laying on the floor, curled up, when mum and dad divorced, and there was just this emptiness and disconnection. And I felt and experienced the same thing when I was a 20-year-old. And I linked the two together. I was like, holy shit, that little boy is still within me. That little boy who's lonely has become the man who's just wanting to be held by the feminine, by women, has become the boy who watches porn to soothe his nervous system because he doesn't have the tools or resources in his own nervous system because he was taken out of his childhood and he didn't develop those strengths. Became the nice guy who lacked boundaries because it wasn't safe for him to be angry and develop his strength of I can be angry and love won't be taken away, which is how we gain the strength of being able to set boundaries. So this is, and why I'm so passionate about this is because typically what we didn't have in childhood becomes our greatest motivator in life. And what's important is that, and it's always a constant check-in from me, that I'm sharing this from the most whole integrated place I possibly can. When it's not being shared from that place and it's shared from the wounding still, that's when it's an issue. But my devotion and mission is to help men become so emotionally connected to themselves to heal the little boy within them so they're no longer showing up in their relationships, in their business, or with their family as the little boy. They can be the bedrock of safety and foundation for the people that they love most, and they can create this safe environment for their children to grow up in a loving family, which is what I didn't have because of the emotional disconnection.
You said in your early 20s, you connected the dots around that inner child, that wounded inner child. Like, was that through support of like a coach that helped you, like, I guess, work through that? Or was that just an awareness piece that came to you through like, I guess, a bit of a download? Like, what happened?
Yeah. I grew up racing motocross when I was younger. And through that, I had different coaches and mentors and whatnot. From that, to train for racing, I then got into CrossFit. And my CrossFit coach at the time was my first experience of healthy masculinity, of this safe masculine presence, where I'd share things with him that I'd never shared with any other men before. And I was like, it was this experience of experiencing safe masculine. I felt more connected to him than my actual father. And that was real, like, whoa, like there's just something about this man. So he kind of became a bit of a mentor for me as well as a coach in my training. But he started referring me to podcasts and certain audiobooks. And I just started consuming. I started listening to Tony Robbins. I started reading The Way of the Superior Man. I started immersing myself in, this different information. And with that, it was a few years of just consuming, being around different people. I started to make the conscious choice and decision to place myself in different environments. Because I remember Tony said in a podcast or in his audiobook one time, environment is stronger than willpower. And when that landed for me when I was a 20-year-old, I was like, holy shit, that is so true. So I'm going to place myself in environments around people who are living the life that I want to live. So I started going to personal development events. I'd buy the VIP tickets because I knew that that's where those people would be. And then not very long after that, I jumped into business with one of my closest brothers or friends now. And he runs one of the largest personal development companies here in Australia now. And I was alongside him as he was building that. And I was meeting the people that he was surrounded with. And I put myself in that environment. And so that's really where things started to shift for me.
I want to shift gears to self-sabotage. What's a common sign you see when someone's self-sabotaging?
Yeah. Repeating the same pattern that's familiar to what they've experienced before. So I'll share and there's many different ways that self-sabotage will show up. For the most part, it'll be in relationships and in business. Self-sabotage is based upon the conceptual idea of who it is that we want to be. So we have this understanding, this conscious understanding of this is who I want to be in the world. This is how I want to show up. But the unconscious, the 95% of us, is on a completely different level, right? So if you think of it like this, I call it like the elephant and the rider. Imagine a man sitting on top of an elephant, right? And the man's like, let's go left. I want to go left. And he's trying to get the elephant to go left because he's like, this is where I want to go, right? Consciously, I know this is where I want to go. This is the amount of money I want to make. This is the kind of relationship I want to have. Let's go left. But if the elephant sees what's familiar to it, what's safe for it, and if it sees food, right, something that's going to comfort him, nourish him, make him feel good based on what he's always known, based on the path that he's always walked, he's going to go right. And there's nothing that little man sitting on top of the elephant can do about it. No matter how hard he wants to go left, the elephant's going right because it's going to what it's always known and what's familiar to it. And the elephant is the 95% of us. The rider is the conscious mind. And this is where we create what's called cognitive dissonance, where you're wanting to go one way, but unconsciously you're going another way, and you're creating this big dissonance in between where it is you want to be and where it is you're actually going. If that makes sense. So how this showed up for me in relationship was so as a little boy, I shared with you that my parents divorced. There was this emotional disconnection in the family, and I was in the middle of that. And then I would live with mom, I'd live with dad, and I was just like their emotional support system, I felt like. I resented mum for leaving dad. I then saw mum start to see other partners. And that was just so fucking confusing for me as a little boy. And I started to develop this belief and this feeling in my body that it's a matter of time before the people I love most leave me, because this is what's familiar. This is what I've experienced. That's the elephant. That's what it's always known. So fast forward to a 25-year-old living in Bali, this beautiful relationship, constantly living in a state of anxiety of she's going to find someone better than me. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. These insecurities playing out. This nice guy, I got to be and become whoever you need me to be so you don't leave me. So I don't experience what I experienced as a 7-year-old, right? To the point where, because I'm living from that fear and that anxiety, those very fears and anxieties manifested the very thing I was most fearful of. I got home one day from the gym. She'd packed her stuff and she left. And I was on my own in an empty villa in Bali, curled up on the floor, my body just shut down. And in that moment, I couldn't tell the difference between the 25-year-old laying on the floor, curled up in a ball, and the 7-year-old who was curled up on the floor in his bedroom when mum was seeing another partner, and there was just this big emotional disconnect. And that's really where I linked deep inner child work and went all in on this stuff, because I realized that little boy was still within me. And that little boy that was so fearful and was living life based on the belief that it's a matter of time before people leave me, actually unconsciously created that because that's what was familiar to me. And what's familiar to our nervous system, like the elephant going right, is what's actually safe, even if it hurts. What's familiar is safe because it's predictable. So unconsciously, the 95% of you're doing certain actions and behaviors that you're not aware of that are actually creating the very thing that you're most fearful of happening.
So why do you think people choose to self-sabotage? Is it because that unconscious mind is just taking, the level of awareness is not strong enough? Like, because it's like, it doesn't work in your benefit. No. So it's like, why are people doing it?
I don't believe people are consciously wanting to sabotage themselves. Let's say if we're speaking about business for a moment and someone and I'll share another, and I like to just share from my experience instead of projecting, and I've worked through with hundreds of men through very similar things. So I'll speak from my experience. And it's that, let's say in business, you want to create a level of success. You want to make a certain amount of money per month. But if you were to actually, let's say you're making $10,000 a month, but you want to make $100,000 a month. If you were to make $100,000 a month, that would imply that you're worthy of $100,000 a month. That goes against everything that you've ever known about yourself. If there's a little boy within who feels that who he is at his core is there's something wrong with him, he's unworthy, he's not good enough, he needs to be whoever he needs to be loved. Actually creating that result goes against everything that he's ever known about himself. So because that would be so unfamiliar for his nervous system, and that would go against everything he's ever known about himself or believed to be true about himself, even though he wants that, the 95% of him will do things to unconsciously sabotage him from creating that. Because if he created that, then that would fuck with his identity and it would go against everything he's ever known. So he'll procrastinate. So he will be inconsistent with doing the things he knows he needs to do to grow his business, right? He'll unconsciously do these things. It's like, I don't know why it's so hard for me to just set a timer and do the work. Because the elephant is like, no, this is what's normal for us. Because if you actually achieve this thing, then that's going to go against everything we've ever known. And then this is where imposter syndrome comes in. Imposter syndrome is, let's say, imposter syndrome is you achieve the thing you said that you wanted to achieve, right? Or you're achieving the results that you've always dreamt about, the relationship, the money, whatever it is. But that goes against everything you've ever known to be true about yourself, right? Which is unfamiliar and unsafe for your nervous system. Because if I'm achieving this, then that means that I'm worthy. And if I'm worthy, that makes no sense because the little boy within me knows that he's not worthy. So you'll do something to unconsciously fuck it up and bring it back down to what you've always known to be true, because that's more important, to come back to what you've always known, what's familiar for your nervous system. So every time I've achieved a level of success where I'm like, holy shit, like, who am I?
Yeah.
And I feel it every level up. And maybe you is the same. It's like, what the fuck, who am I? There's a level of integration that happens in that point. And there's layers and levels to us healing the boy and integrating him, right? So let's say when I achieve those certain results, it's like, yeah, of course you did. Because like, I've got you. Like, you're so worthy. Like, it's the integration of that younger part. But that's where imposter syndrome comes up. And this is what I call identity regulation. It's like a thermostat. If you're regulated to the little boy that feels that I'm inherently unworthy, right? You will do something to regulate yourself back down to your inherent belief system, what you believe to be true about yourself at the deepest core level.
Makes sense.
Yes.
Out of all the men you've coached, how many of them, like what percentage are suffering from self-sabotage? Like, is it super common? Or what does it look like? Like roughly?
Yeah. I would say all of them, because by the time they come to me, they've either achieved a level of success and they've lost themselves in the process, and they're like, I can't deal with this anymore. Or their marriage or their relationship is breaking down, or their partner has literally just left them. And the sad truth is, a lot of men wait until it's painful enough before they listen to the subtle invitations that were always there for him to heal the younger parts of him that were keeping him stuck at that limited way of thinking, being, acting, behaving, that limited emotional capacity, where sometimes it takes for the false self that he's created to break, to crack open, for him to come back to his true nature, for him to heal the younger part of him. So a lot of the times, yes, it's normally most men, just from the sheer numbers that I've worked with, wait until it's painful enough, and they have sabotaged everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're at that level already.
Yeah.
Got
it. But it doesn't have to get to that point. That's the thing. That's why I love doing podcasts and sharing with men, because if there's anything that triggers you in this, if it's like, yeah, I feel overwhelmed all the fucking time. And yeah, I turn to porn or drinking or my partner's love and validation in order to soothe me and make me feel good and feel better. We need a chat. Like, speak to someone, go to a somatic therapist, go to a men's circle, men's group. There's so much out there that you can do. Yeah.
For someone listening to this who's suffering from self-sabotage, like maybe, there's a level of awareness now that they've cracked into around what they're doing. What's like a step or a series of steps that you could recommend in order to maybe break that pattern? I know we don't have days, but like, is there something that you could recommend just to kind of get a quick win?
Yeah. Beneath the self-sabotage is normally an unresolved emotion or feeling. For example, let's say that you are turning to some vice. Maybe it's scrolling social media. Maybe it's working, right? Maybe it's overworking. Maybe it's binge watching TV or vaping or something like that. These subtle ways that we need things outside of us to feel good. Allowing yourself to sit with the urge and be in the discomfort and feel into what's actually beneath here. What's the feeling and the emotion that's beneath you? And typically, it'll be the younger part of you when you get deeper enough or deep enough. It'll be the younger part of you that's either doesn't know how to soothe and feel good, so he needs this thing like a hit of oxygen to feel good and regulate himself. So it would be to sit with the emotion that's actually beneath the urge to do the thing you know that you do, the habit or the behavior that's leading you to sabotage your business or your relationship. Because it's these small little habits, right? So self-sabotage, for the most part, manifests as these small little unhealthy habits that don't serve us, like procrastination. But I'm sure in that time of procrastination, you fucking scroll or like you're doing something to fill the void. And it's being with the discomfort of what's actually beneath that. And the belief systems, right? That the limiting belief systems of, whatever might come up that causes the self-sabotage. Like maybe I'm not good enough to make that level of success.
Yeah.
There's a younger part of you beneath that, the little boy who doesn't feel good enough. And there's a reason he doesn't feel good enough, because there was a moment in time where he didn't have the loving presence that he needed, probably from the masculine support that he didn't receive. And this loving presence for him in that moment to connect with himself and to know that inherently he's worthy of everything he wants. There's a difference between being worthy and deserving as well. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, no, it does.
Yep.
No, that's good, yeah, because I mean, a lot of people haven't even heard the word self-sabotage. So it's good to understand that. So you work with a lot of successful men, right? You've just shared that earlier. Like, is there a commonality as to why, when they hit their goals, they feel empty inside? Because they obviously think, when I hit my goals, I'm going to feel full. But a lot of time, and I've been through that myself a lot, it's quite the contrary.
Yeah. There's this thing that I teach men called, it's the void that I shared before. Now, what a lot of men do, because we're great at being visionaries of in the future, I'm going to build this thing, I'm going to create this thing, right? We're great at that as men. When a little boy didn't receive the love and connection that he needed, and he felt this sense of loneliness or emptiness in his childhood, what happens is he gets really good at being a visionary. But what's actually happening in that moment is he's painting a picture of the future to avoid the current feeling and emotion that he's feeling. So one day I'll have this relationship, one day I'll have all the money in the world and I don't have to feel this and be this way, right? So he then becomes a high-performing man who goes out there and creates that vision, creates that picture, but he's running from the void, the disconnect from himself, from the needs he didn't have met in childhood and the emotional disconnect that he experienced. So he then creates a thing, he creates the vision, creates the picture, but at some point he comes back to the void because he creates the thing and he goes, this feeling's still here. And he can either keep trying to project into the future and create this perfect reality, right? And then he achieves everything he wants and more, but it just never feels enough. He still feels the same emptiness, loneliness, and then he just keeps trying to fill that void, that emptiness with stuff, with working even more, with his distractions. So at some point, we got to come back to the original pain that we experienced in childhood and reclaim that. And the issue with the high-performing men is a lot of their life has been built upon the foundation of the original pain of that little boy. When I explained the rings of the tree, those rings are parts of us. And when a man's foundation is built upon, let's say, the second ring, right? The second ring, let's say, is a little boy who felt this shame that there's something wrong with him and he must become whoever he needs to be. He builds an entire life based on that foundation and becomes whoever he needs to be. He doesn't have this connection to himself. So a lot of high successful men that I've worked with, they've built this level of success or this life based on the foundation of the shame that there's something inherently wrong with who I am. So no matter what he does, right, it's his whole life. Like no matter what he does, it comes with him. It's just contaminated with, I constantly never feel like I'm enough. I'm doing enough, that I'm enough for my partner, that I'm And with that, as humans, we do everything to avoid feeling shame. So he can't be present in the moment. He will struggle to just be present because his brain is constantly on the lookout for threats to avoid feeling the shame of the little boy who feels that he's not enough. And the problem here is when the man becomes confused with that younger part, the boy. And the little boy who doesn't feel enough becomes the man who doesn't feel enough. There's no separation. So through this work, we get to hold those younger parts of us, let them know, I'm here, I see you, I've got you. It's all good. You're safe. What is it you need from me? And it's allowing those younger parts to have a voice and the safe, loving presence that they needed in childhood. And what happens is this is where we get to hold ourselves and hold those younger parts so the man can show up, the present man, the grounded man that's not constantly on the lookouts for threats. He's in the present moment. He's here. He's in his heart because he's got himself. But most men are 40, 50-year-old men walking around as grown men, but they're actually still stuck in the timestamp of that little boy. And there's no separation. There's no difference between that little 7-year-old boy and this man. So through this work, it's us creating that separation between those younger parts and the man. So the man that has the capacity can show up. And what that also looks like, the man that goes after what it is that he truly wants as well. Because when these men come to me, a lot of the times, the success that they've created has been built on the foundation of the boy.
Yeah.
And it's not truly what they want to be doing. And that's why it's unfulfilling when they achieve it, because it's been built on this void. So this is why it's like there's a big grieving process here of letting go of the life that you've created for yourself based on these unresolved wounds. And now it's starting to climb up the right ladder, the ladder that is more meaningful and fulfilling to you. I used to be in construction, right? And now I get to share and do what I love doing every single day. And I was very lucky to have that awakening and climb the right ladder at an early age. Yep.
Just touching on that last bit. So
Yep.
you're in construction, you found your calling, your higher calling. Do you find that when people come through your process, they heal that inner child, they go through that grieving process, they then realize like the work that they're doing is not on purpose and it's time for a change, like to do something different? Is that something that happens?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. The beautiful part in that is there's also certain strengths that we developed along the way. When a man's been operating from the emotional maturity or the consciousness of the little boy who's maybe still seeking the love and the support that he wanted from his father, he gains some strengths in that. He might become a high-performing man who is highly successful, right? Because he's learned like a high-paying skill set, or he's become a really good leader because he became whoever he needed to be. Now it's him reclaiming those strengths and integrating the little boy within him where he now gets to use those strengths, but from a place that's not from fear or not from shame. And as the man, he can now use the strengths that he's developed from a more healthy, integrated place. And this is where we're able to start helping men create a life of more deeper meaning and fulfillment, right? Using the strengths that they've already developed. Because a lot of men think that if I heal, right, and I have to climb, or if I want to be in this career and doing this, it means I have to start at the bottom and climb the entire ladder. Yeah. Right? A lot of the times, it's not true. A lot of the times it's that he gets to, like I said, bring everything that he's learned from who he became, and he gets to bring it into a way that's more meaningful to him. And it's typically he's more successful in doing that than doing the thing that's unfulfilling to him, because this gives him energy. Yeah. And if this gives him energy, he's going to show up better. He's going to show up more, and he's going to put in more work. Yeah. So he's going to be more successful at that thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are some of the symptoms of unfulfillment, like, doing work that's not purposeful, like is that taking drugs, getting on the piss, medicating yourself? Like, are they common symptoms that you see of people who are just, they could be ultra successful, but there's that empty void? Like, what do those symptoms look like that you see?
Yeah. A lot of what I've experienced around unfulfillment is that void. And let's say you've created a level of success, right? Or you have this beautiful relationship or marriage, but there's still this deep level of unfulfillment. That's a invitation, those feelings of unfulfillment, for you to feel and come back to the void and allow yourself to explore and be curious as to what's actually beneath this, the feeling, the emotion.
Yeah.
Instead of distracting yourself from it or trying to fill that void. So what that might look like, for example, is let's say that you are stressed, you're overwhelmed, you have so much going on, and you want to turn to porn, right? To have a release, right? If you were to just pause before you go and do the thing and feel from what places is coming from, and sit there and just feel it. And then just keep asking yourself from what places is coming from, and to just sit there and feel it. And typically it'll be the little boy who feels lonely or disconnected or isolated. And that's his form of connection. So he can fill the void in that moment, right? Or he can choose to create the loving presence that the younger part of him is needing, right? And what normally happens is when we resolve the original pain or bring loving presence to it, the urge to want to do the thing is no longer there. Yeah. Because you're no longer filling the void.
Got it.
Yeah.
It all seems to loop back to the void and I guess the inner child. And seems like there's a lot of seems like you've got to really rewind the clock and have a very strong level of awareness around what you'd experienced, right? You work with a lot of successful men who are, you could say, stuck or disconnected. What's a common emotional blind spot that they face that like damages their business or relationships?
Yeah. As you shared, it all comes back to to the boy. The most, I would say, the emotion would be, and what I notice and what I've experienced myself would be the nice guy, right? But beneath the nice guy is the shame.
Yeah.
Is the shame that I need to perform and I need to be perfect and get everything right and be a certain way, right? To not fuck up so people don't leave me. And that was me for the longest time. I had to show up a certain way for my clients, right? I would jump on a sales call and I'd be like unconsciously, like, I need you. Like, because of this shame of like, I need you to reflect back to me that I'm enough.
Like validation.
Yes. Yep. And this unresolved shame is what will drive a man. And when he's driven by that unresolved shame, this is where, and it's what we call toxic shame.
Yeah.
Is where in childhood, when he didn't have the safe space, the loving space to make a mistake and know that he's loved no matter what, love won't be taken away from him, even if he makes a mistake. He starts to develop this over time, this sense of there's something inherently wrong with who I am. So I must be and become whoever I need to be in order to be loved, right?
And that's toxic shame?
That becomes toxic shame. It becomes over time. Toxic shame is that I've no longer made a mistake, I am the mistake.
Got it.
I've no longer made, I haven't caused a problem, I am the problem.
Interesting.
Yeah, where the shame becomes internalized, it becomes who I am.
Okay.
And I notice an experience myself is, and a big piece that I take men through is healing the nice guy in business. The nice guy who doesn't have boundaries. He needs the clients more than they need him, sort of thing. And him running from that unresolved toxic shame where he struggles to take feedback or criticism of where he could do things better or show up better as a leader, in doing everything in his power to avoid the original pain, the shame of the little boy who didn't feel that he was enough. Yeah. So the nice guy is a huge piece that comes up in business. And this is where men lack that emotional capacity to deal with what's actually coming up for them. And then they start holding resentment and they become passive aggressive, or they become short, or they go quiet and they shut down. They become closed off because they don't actually have boundaries. The nice guy lacks boundaries because he can't say no. He says yes to everything. Yeah. And he can't say no because he overcommits to things for the validation from those people, either in that moment or from him doing the thing and achieving the thing. That's like his hit of oxygen of like, oh, awesome. Like I'm accepted by these people. I'm validated. I'm enough. And the issue with the nice guy in business, like I said, he can't say no. He lacks boundaries. And when we lack boundaries, it's like we don't have this invisible, like this is my space, right? You lack boundaries, so people walk over you. You don't have your own space. And that's why things feel overwhelming all the time when people bring things to you, or you're constantly being walked over all the time because you don't have this strong ability to say no, right? And anger is a protector emotion. So this is where a man becomes, so you asked about the emotion that we feel is the irritability, the moodiness, the passive aggressiveness, the shutting down or reacting or going quiet and just going, oh, I'll just fucking do it myself then.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of that has come from the nice guy who didn't have the boundaries or couldn't say no. And he spent an entire life abandoning himself, abandoning his needs. And he just gets walked over. And that is a result of the little boy, right? Who didn't have the safety to, this is my space. These are my boundaries. Because if he was angry at his parents, love was taken away, right? If he pushed back, love was taken away. And that's one of the most important needs that a little boy needed in a certain stage of what they call the second birth, the psychological birth. That's where he develops that boundary, that sense of self, where he can say no. And so the emotion would be the irritability, the shutting down, the getting easily frustrated or reactive. And beneath that is everything I just shared around the nice guy and yeah.
I can relate to the people pleaser. Like I fully used to be that. I've actually got 2 T-shirts, one that says no and yes, and I alternate it with the polarization just to remind myself not to say yes to everything.
Yes.
And then also just to be, no with just guarding my time, because I still need those reminders because I feel like I can slip back into bad habits. Why do you think men see, why do you think emotional strength for men means emotional suppression?
As I shared before, we come from a family system, and if a little boy didn't have a healthy role model from the masculine of emotional connection and vulnerability, seeing his father cry, his father who was connected to his own nervous system and had a strong connection to himself, that's his representation of what it means to be a man. A little boy needs men around him. There's a certain stage of development where a man is stripped away from his mother. He's supposed to be, from the motherly energy, the nurturing energy, where he learns to breathe on his own, stand on his own 2 feet. And he goes and he learns what it means to be a man, right? By being around elders. We don't have a lot of elders. We have a lot of old people. One of my good friends, Ryan, shared a reel about this the other day. We have a lot of old people in the world, but not a lot of elders that have cultivated wisdom throughout their life. And that's an important piece that a little boy needs. He needs that eldership and that support of like healthy masculine connection and feeling it. Like there's an unspoken felt sense when a man is emotionally connected to his nervous system, and like you can feel the presence of a safe man. And when a little boy receives that as a child, like he develops this nervous system that feels this emotional connection with the masculine. And he has this healthy representation and role model of healthy masculinity. And as I shared, like one of my early mentors was this safe man, where I felt his nervous system. I was like, I feel more connected to you than my actual father. And in that, I naturally was vulnerable with him. And it's like my nervous system had the safety to open. And a lot of men haven't had that example or role model of healthy, safe masculine energy. And they're still connected to the feminine. And they think that the only way to feel or express their emotions is through women. And how that shows up is a man who's holding the world on his shoulders, but he doesn't have healthy men around him to support him emotionally. So he leans on his relationship for that emotional support. And he uses his relationship and his partner for that emotional support. Where she no longer has the space to rely or depend on him emotionally because he's leaning on her so much. And that's what happens when a man doesn't have that healthy separation from the motherly energy growing up as a boy and goes and connects with healthy masculine men.
Have you seen the contrast of men that come into your circle who grow up with a father who is very expressive with their emotions? Like, they're actually crying in front of their son, or whatever the circumstance is, they're expressing emotions, versus the contrast where they grow up without it and how they then show up as an adult. Have you seen how that plays out?
Yeah, I have. And what I've seen is that this is where a man doesn't experience the masculine, like the true masculine support. If he has a father who's just a mess, like just very easily he's ungrounded within himself. Yeah, that's reflected into the little boy, and he will also become a man who's then ungrounded in himself and very lacks this sense of real support in himself. And how that then looks is he might become a high-performing nice guy, right, in the world, a high-performing man who feels that he has to hold the world on his shoulders because his original foundations of his father was unstable, wasn't supportive. When a little boy in childhood feels this unshakable foundation of support from healthy masculine with a dad who, yes, is emotionally expressive and is in his emotional experience, but is also deeply connected to himself and solid in himself and has that foundation. He grows up through life and he just lacks this sense of support. And like I see it all the time when men just feel overwhelmed all of the time. They feel like they have to carry all of this because they don't have that foundation of support in their nervous system, where it's like, no matter what, wherever I go, I know my father is with me. The masculine support is here, always. And he carries that through and he feels like he has to hold it all on his own.
You said the word vulnerable before when you were like referring to your coach that you obviously opened up. What's your view on men being vulnerable?
Yeah. It's an absolute necessity, but within vulnerability, there's normally the wounding. as well. For a man to open up and be vulnerable about his experience and what he's experiencing, it's also for him to have the courage to lean into the wound that's actually beneath what's coming up for him and that's present for him. A lot of men can be vulnerable and just share, but not actually really lean in and heal the younger part of him that's present as well. And I feel absolutely. It's super important for a man to be vulnerable and to be emotionally connected to himself in that way with the right people. I've seen men, as I shared before, when they lean on their partner for emotional support and they're just constantly vulnerable with their partner all the freaking time, there's certain things that you bring to your partner, to a woman, and there's certain things that you bring to the bros, to the men. And when men don't have those other men around them to support them emotionally and hold them in their vulnerability, they use their relationship and burn it out, where they're leaning on their partner emotionally, but they don't have the capacity within themselves to support her emotionally or create emotional safety for her because he's leaning on it so much with his vulnerability. So there's a level of, absolutely, for a man sharing his vulnerability, but it's discerning when and where and who with. And that's why it's so important that he has healthy brotherhood to bring it to the men, because the men will hold him very differently. They'll hold him and support him, but they'll also challenge him to be better. They'll hold him accountable. When he brings it to women, it's very different energy. Typically, it's the little boy within him who's seeking to be held and nurtured. And that's where it's really checking in with yourself. From what place am I sharing this from?
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
I was just thinking and relating to myself around how I've brought shit to my partner historically that just didn't need to go that way. And it's just a fucking dump. And then I can see how over time that can lead to burnout of the relationship if you don't get your shit in order. Because then it just becomes just a pattern.
Yep.
And then you don't have, as you said, the bros, your mates to kind of feed it into that bucket. That's really interesting. And I can see how that can play out really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the biggest mistakes that I made in relationship. And if I was to ask myself the question, from what place is this coming from? It's the little boy who was like starving for her validation and her love to fill the void, to fill that emptiness within me. Because if I brought it to the bros, yes, they would hold me. Yes, they would support me. But they would also challenge me to be like, hey, bro, like there's a little boy here as well.
Yeah.
And within that, it's not being closed off to your partner about what you're experiencing, but instead of leaning on her and emotionally dumping and needing her to support you emotionally, you get to bring her the awareness. So instead of bringing her the wound, you get to bring her the awareness. Because when you bring your wound or your vulnerability or you bring your stuff to the bros and you handle it and you be with it, you gather the awareness. It's like, cool, I can bring this to you now from a place of awareness. It's like, I just want you to know that like when you did this thing, I noticed that this came up for me.
Yeah.
And it was a little boy. And what he really needed in that moment was this, compared to why the fuck did you do that thing? It made me feel this way. It's like you're still bringing it to her from the wound. So bringing it back to the certain rite of passage and initiation from boy to man, when a little boy is stripped away from the motherly energy, the nurturing energy, which is his oxygen supply, when he's stripped away from that at a certain age, and they knew this it's dated back as long as you could track, for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years, right? In the 1970s, the book Iron John the story of Iron John was told in the 1700s. And that was the journey from boy to man of a boy being stripped away from the motherly energy, the nurturing energy, and going and living with the wild man, the men. Now, that oxygen supply, when he's stripped away from that, he then learns how to breathe on his own, where he doesn't need that nurturing and that mothering to survive. But when a little boy was love deprived, oxygen deprived, or he had too much oxygen where like the love was overbearing, he doesn't learn how to breathe on his own. So then he becomes a grown man in relationship who is either still seeking for that oxygen that he didn't receive from the motherly energy growing up, right? Or he seeks not for a partner, but for a mother because he never learned how to breathe on his own.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he looks for a woman to take care of him and nurture him from the little boy. So it's this unresolved trauma or these unmet developmental needs is imprinted into who we are. And through what's called implicit memory, our body doesn't know the difference between what happened when we were a boy and what's happening right now in this moment. Relationships will trigger you straight back into that timestamp of your earliest experiences of relationship. This is where attachment theory starts to come into play. So to bring it back to your piece there, it's like until that separation happens, and these rites of passage are something that a man needs to go through even today. So what would it look like for you to break up with your mother, or to create that separation with the feminine through you receiving that mothering, that nurturing, and starting to cultivate more healthy connection with men and brotherhood? Yeah. So you can really be in your own frame while you're in relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the men listening to this who, let's say they don't have a circle of men that they can be vulnerable to, or if they're projecting on their their wife or partner, and then they want to go, "Hey, I want to throw this to the boys," but they don't have that environment to kind of throw it to them because those guys might make fun of them or like just don't know how to hold space. So what do you suggest to the people who don't have that circle?
Yeah.
What do they do?
You've had a few men's work coaches or men on your podcast, right? Mentors. Myself, those guys, you can reach out to us, ask us. I know circles around here on the Gold Coast, like there are brotherhoods and there's circles, there's men's groups around, healthy masculine men around. If you just start asking the question, start looking for these men. For the most part, the men that don't have that, don't have access to that, that's where I work with them, right? I create that safe, loving presence that a man needed as a little boy to be held in a safe brotherhood with men that not only hold him and support him emotionally, but challenge him and hold him accountable to be the best man he can possibly be, right? So the man can show up who has the capacity, not the little boy. And it's a continuous holding space for that. So you could reach out to me, ask the question. You could, there's men's circles everywhere. There's all, when you start asking the question, you'll find something.
Unreal. Yep. Thanks, Ryan. Really enjoyed this session with you.
Thank you, bro.
Cheers.